करते हैं आप लोग अच्छे होंगे। चलिए फ्रेंड, आज की वीडियो में हम लोग बात करने वाले हैं एनसीईआरटी क्लास 8 का हिस्ट्री का जो सेकेंड मतलब दूसरा चैप्टर में फ्रॉम ट्रेड टू टेरिटरी के बारे में दिया हुआ है। तो इसी के बारे में हम लोग डिटेल में चर्चा करेंगे। इसी में दिया हुआ द कंपनी इस्टेब्लिशेस पावर, तो कंपनी ने पावर कैसे इस्टेब्लिश की थे इसके बारे में हम लोग डिटेल में चर्चा करेंगे। तो चलिए वीडियो में बिना देरी किए हुए चलते हैं और देखते हैं हिस्ट्री का क्लास 8 का चैप्टर 2। तो इसी में Aurangzeb, why the last of the powerful Mughal rulers, he established control over a very large part of the territory that is known as India. After his death in the 1707 and 1707, many Mughal governors and Subedar and big Jamindars began the asserting their authority and the establishing the regional kingdoms as powerful regional kingdoms emerged in various parts of India. Delhi could no longer function as an effective center by the second half of the 18th century. However, a new power was emerging on the political horizon, the British. Did you know that the British originally came as a small trading company and were the reluctant to acquire the territories? How then did they came to be masters of a vast empire? In this चैप्टर यू विल सी हाउ दिस केम अबाउट। तो इस चैप्टर में हम लोग जानेंगे कैसे आया था और कैसे अपना एम्पायर उस लोगों ने इस्टेब्लिश किया था। ये फिगर पहला दिया हुआ था, आप लोग पिक्चर में भी देख सकते हैं। उसके बाद ये पिक्चर के बारे में कहा जाता है कि फिगर 1, बहादुर शाह जफर एंड हिज सन्स बीइंग अरेस्टेड बाय द कैप्टन हॉडसन के द्वारा अरेस्ट कर लिया गया था। आफ्टर औरंगजेब देयर वाज नो पावरफुल मुगल रूलर बट मुगल एम्पायर्स continued to be the symbolically the important. In fact, when a massive rebellion against the British rule broke out in the 1857, Bahadur Shah Jafar, the Mughal emperor at the time, was seen as the natural leader. Once the revolt was put down by the company, Bahadur Shah Jafar was forced to leave the kingdom and his sons were shot in cold blood। तो ये हो गया। उसके बाद हम लोग बात करें ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी की। आप लोग देख सकते हैं ये मैप दिया हुआ है। ये ब्रिटिश जो है वो किधर से आए थे, आइलैंड अफ्रीका, इधर से करते करते वो बॉम्बे यानी इंडिया आ गया था, मद्रास कलकत्ता, और वहीं पे ये दिया हुआ रूट्स टू इंडियन इन द 18th सेंचुरी। 18th सेंचुरी का इंडिया का जो रूट है वो ब्रिटिशर्स द्वारा ये था। उसके बाद ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी की बात करें तो ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी केम्स ईस्ट इन द 16th सेंचुरी, यानी इन 1600 द ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी एक्वायर्ड ए चैप्टर फ्रॉम द रूलर ऑफ इंग्लैंड क्वीन एलिजाबेथ फर्स्ट, granting it the sole right to trade with the East. This meant this meant that no other trading group in England could compete with the East India Company. With this chapter, the company could venture venture across the oceans looking for the new lands from which it could buy goods at the cheap price and carry them back to Europe to sell at the higher prices. The company did not have to fear the competition from the other English trading companies। तो ये सब दिया हुआ। उसके बाद mercantile trading companies in those days made the profit primarily by the excluding competition so that they could buy cheap and sell dear। उसके बाद फिर इसी में आगे देता है कि the royal chapter however could not prevent other European powers from the entering the eastern market. By the time the first English ships sailed down the west coast of Africa round the Cape of Good Hope and crossed the Indian Ocean, the Portuguese had already established their presence in the western coast of India and had their base in the Goa. In fact, it was Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese explorer, who had discovered this sea route to India in 1498, यानी कि वास्को डी गामा में इस रूट का खोज किया और 1498 में भारत आया था। बाय द अर्ली 17th century, the Dutch too were exploring the possibilities of the trade in the Indian Ocean. Soon the French traders arrived on the scene. उसके बाद मतलब ब्रिटिशर्स आए, उसके बाद पुर्तगीज और उसके बाद डच और फ्रेंच, उसके बाद सब आने लगे थे यहाँ पे ट्रेड करने के लिए। और मार्केंटाइल की बात करें तो मार्केंटाइल क्या होता है? ये बिजनेस इंटरप्राइज दैट मेक्स द प्रॉफिट primarily through the trade, buying the goods cheap and selling them या higher prices, तो इसी को मर्केंटाइल बोलते हैं। उसके बाद फिर आगे हम लोग बात करें तो this problem why that all the companies were the interested in the buying the same things, the fine qualities of cotton and silk produced in India had a big market in Europe, यानी कि इंडिया में जो ट्रेड करता था वो लोग कॉटन का जो होता है उसका, और यूरोप में इसका ट्रेड करता था। Europe paper cloths, cardamom and the cinnamon too were in the great demand. The competition amongst the European companies inevitably pushed up the prices at which these goods could be the purchased, and this reduced the profit that could be the earned. The only way the trading companies could the flourish was by the eliminating rival competitors. The urge to secure markets therefore led to fierce the battles between the trading companies through the 17th and the 18th century. They regularly sank each other's ships, the blockade route, and the prevented rival ships from the moving with the supplies of goods trade by the carried one with arm, and the trading posts were the protected through the fortification। उसके बाद फिर इसी में देता है कि दिस एफर्ट टू द fortify the statement and the carry on the profitable the trade also lead to the instance conflict with local rulers. The company therefore the found it difficult to separate trade from the politics. Let us see how this happened। उसके बाद फिर इसी में आगे देता है कि ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी बीइंग द ट्रेड इन बंगाल, ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी ने बंगाल में जो बीइंग ट्रेड किया था उसके बारे में। द फर्स्ट इंग्लिश फैक्ट्री वाज सेट अप ऑन द बैंक ऑफ द रिवर हुगली इन 1651। तो पहला जो अंग्रेजों ने कंपनी डाली थी वो 1651 में किस रिवर के किनारे? तो बैंक ऑफ हुगली, यानी हुगली रिवर के किनारे, ये बंगाल में हुगली डिस्ट्रिक्ट में पड़ता है। उसके बाद फिर इसी में बात करें तो दिस वाई द बेस फ्रॉम विच द कंपनीज ट्रेडर्स नन एट दैट टाइम एज द फैक्ट्रीज ऑपरेटेड। द फैक्ट्री हैड ये वेयर हाउस where goods for the export were stored, and it had the offices where the company officials sat. As the trade expanded, the company the persuaded the merchants and the traders to come and the settle near the factory by 1696। और काम करने वाले लोग भी जो थे वहीं पे सेटल हो गए। 1696 की बात है ये। उसके बाद फिर आगे इसी में देता है कि इट बिगन द बिल्डिंग ए फ्रंट अराउंड द settlement। 2 years later it the bribed Mughal officials into the giving the company the zamindari rights over 3 villages. One of these was the Kalikata, which later grew into the city of Kolkata as it is known today. Is also persuaded the Mughal emperor Aurangzeb to issue a farman granting the company the right to trade duty free। तो ये सब था उसमें। उसके बाद फिर बात करें तो द कंपनी ट्राइड द कॉन्टिन्यूसली टू प्रेस फ्रॉम द मोर कॉन्शियसनेस एंड द मैनिपुलेट एग्जिस्टिंग प्रिविलेज। द औरंगजेब्स फरमान फॉर द इंस्टेंस एंड द ग्रांटेड ओनली द कंपनी द राइट टू ट्रेड ड्यूटी फ्री, बट officials of the company who were carrying on the private trade on the side were the expected to pay duty. This they refused to pay, the causing and the enormous loss of the revenue from the Bengal. How could the Nawab of Bengal मुर्शीद कुरैशी खान नॉट प्रोटेस्ट? उसके बाद फरमान का मतलब ये रॉयल एडिक्ट, ये रॉयल ऑर्डर। उसके बाद ये फिगर दिया हुआ है, इसके बारे में देख लीजिए। ये कंपनी ये बंगाल में था, हुगली डिस्ट्रिक्ट में, हुगली रिवर के किनारे। इसके बारे में बोला जाता है फिगर 3 लोकल बोट्स ब्रिंग गुड्स फ्रॉम शिप्स इन मद्रास पेंटेड बाय द विलियम सिम्पसन 1867 की बात है। इस उसके बाद फिर आगे में दिया हुआ है हाउ ट्रेड लीड टू बैटल्स थ्रू द अर्ली 18th सेंचुरी द कॉन्फ्लिक्ट बिटवीन द कंपनी एंड द नवाब ऑफ बंगाल intensified after the death of the Aurangzeb. The Bengal Nawabs arrested their the power and autonomy as other regional power were doing at that time. The Murshid Quli Khan was followed by Ali Bardi Khan and the Sirajudullah as the Nawab of the Bengal. Each one of them was a strong ruler. They refused to grant the company consciousness, demand large tributes for the company's right to trade, the denied it any right to mint the coins, and the stopped it from the extending its the fortification, accusing the company of the deceit. They claimed that the company was the depriving the Bengal government of the huge amount of the revenue and the undermining the authority of the Nawab. Refusing to pay taxes, writing the disrespectful letters, and the trying to the humiliate the नवाब and his officials. तो इसके बारे में ये रॉबर्ट क्लाइव का तस्वीर इधर दिया हुआ है। फिर इसी में आगे कहता है कि द कंपनी वन इट्स द पार्ट डिक्लेयर दैट द unjust the demands of the local officials were the running the trade of the company, and the trade could the flourish only the if the duties were the removed. It was also the convinced that to expand trade it had to enlarge its the settlements, buy up the village, and the rebuild its the forts. उसके बाद फिर इसी में आगे कहता है कि the conflicts lead to the conformation and the finally culminated in the famous battle of प्लासी। प्लासी का युद्ध यहाँ से स्टार्ट होता है। उसके बाद पुपेट के बारे में बताएं। पुपेट लिटरली ए टॉय दैट यू कैन मूव विद द स्ट्रिंग्स। द term is used the disapprovingly to the refer to a person who is the controlled by the someone else। इसके बारे में बात करते हैं। और फिर यहाँ से स्टार्ट होता है बैटल ऑफ प्लासी। द बैटल ऑफ प्लासी की बात करें तो when अलीवर्दी खां डाइड इन द 1756 यानी कि 1756 में अलवर्दी खां डाइड, सिराजुद्दौला बिकम द नवाब ऑफ बंगाल। द कंपनी वाज वरीड अबाउट हिज पावर एंड कीन वन ये puppet ruler who would the willingly the give trade conscience and the other privilege. So it tried through the without success to help one of Sirajuddaullah's rivals the became the Nawab, and the infuriated the Sirajuddaulah asked the company to stop meddling in the political affairs of his dominion, stop the fortification and pay the revenue। जिसके बाद फिर इसी में देता है आफ्टर नेगोशिएशन फेल्ड द आफ्टर negotiation failed, the Nawab marched with the 13,000 soldiers to the English factory at the Kasim Bazar. Kasim Bazar captured the company official, locked the warehouse, the disarmed all Englishmen, and the blocked the English ships. Then he marched to Kolkata to establish the control over the company's fort there. On hearing the news of the fall of Calcutta, company official in Madras sent forces under the command of Robert Clive, reinforced by the naval fleets. The prolonged prolonged the negotiation with the Nawab followed the finally in 1757. Robert Clive led the company's army against the Sirajuddaulah at the Plassey, one of main reason for। तो ये मेन रीजन था। उसके बाद डिड यू नो, इसके बारे में क्या दिया हुआ है कि आप जानते हैं। डिड यू नो हाउ प्लासी गॉट इट्स नेम? प्लासी इज एंड द एग्लिसाइज्ड pronunciation of the Plassey, and the Plass derived its the name from the Plass tree. Plass tree known for its the beautiful red flowers that yield the gulal, the पाउडर यूज इन द फेस्टिवल ऑफ होली, यानी कि होली में पलाश के बारे में ही दिया हुआ, बेसिकली पलाश का फूल वगैरह, तो ये सब है। उसके वन ऑफ द मेन रीजन फॉर, तो मेन रीजन के बारे में देखें तो यहाँ पे ये फिगर दिया हुआ है, फिगर 5, द जनरल कोर्ट रूम ईस्ट इंडिया हाउस, द लिडरनर स्ट्रीट, द कोर्ट ऑफ द proprieties of the East India Company had their meetings in the East India House on the Leadenhall Street in the London. This is a picture of one of their meetings in the progress. तो ये सब हो गया। उसके बाद the defeat of the Nawab, the forces led by the Mir Jafar, one of the Sirajuddaullah's commanders, never fought the battle. Clive and the merged to secure his support by the promising to make him the Nawab after the crushing the Sirajuddaulah. The Battle of Plassey became famous because it was the first major victory the company won in India. ये सिराजुद्दौला का तस्वीर हो गया। ये इसके बाद सोर्स की बात करें, सोर्स 1 में दिया हुआ द प्रोमिस ऑफ रिचेस, द टेरिटोरियल एम्बिशंस ऑफ द mercantile East India Company were the viewed with the distrust and doubt in the England after the Battle of Plassey. Robert Clive wrote a William Pitt, one of the principal secretariats of state to the English monarch on the 7 January 1759 on the Calcutta। उसके बाद फिर इसी में आगे देता है, but so large sovereignty many possibly be and the object too extensive for a mercantile company. I flatter myself that there will be little or no difficulty in the obtaining the absolute possessions of these rich kingdoms। उसके बाद इसी में आगे फिर देता है कि now I leave you to judge whether and the I income yearly of the 2 million sterling with the procession of three provisions be and the object deserving the public attention। तो ये सब हो गया। उसके बाद फिर इसी में आगे देता है, after the defeat at Plassey, Sirajuddaulah was the assassinated and the Mir Jafar made the Nawab. The company was still unwilling to take over the responsibility of the administration। उसके बाद its prime objective was the expansion of trade, if this could be done without the conquest through the help of the local rulers who were willing to grant the privilege, then the territories need not be taken over the directly। उसके बाद फिर इसी में आगे देता है, soon the company discovered that this was rather difficult, for even the puppet nawabs were not always as helpful as the company wanted them to be। after all they had to maintain a basic appearance of the dignity and the sovereignty if they wanted respect from their subjects। उसके बाद फिर इसी में what could the company do when Mir Jafar protested? The company deposed him and installed Mir Qasim in his place। when the Mir Qasim complained that he is turn was defeated in a battle fought at बक्सर 1764, यानी कि 1764 में बक्सर का युद्ध है, उसके बारे में ड्राइविंग आउट ऑफ बंगाल एंड द मीर जफर वाई द reinstalled, the Nawab had to pay Rs 5 lakh every month, but the company wanted more money to the finance its wars and meet the demands of trade and its other expense. It wanted more territory and more revenue. By the time Mir Jafar died in the 1765, the mood of the company had changed. Having failed to work with puppet Nawabs, Clive declared, "We must indeed become the Nawabs our lives." उसके बाद फिर इसमें फाइनली इन द 1765 द मुगल एम्पायर अपॉइंटेड द कंपनी एज द Diwan of the province of Bengal. The Diwani allowed the company to use the vast revenue resources of Bengal. This solved a major problem that the company had earlier faced from the early 18th century. Its trade with India had expanded, but it had to buy most of the goods in India with gold and silver imported from the Britain. This was because at this time Britain had no goods to sell in India. फिर इसी में आगे दे द outflow of gold from the Britain solved after the Battle of Plassey and the entirely stopped after the assumption of the Diwani. Assumption of Diwani. Now revenues from the India could finance company expenses. These revenues could be used to purchase cotton and silk textile in India, maintain company troops, and meet the cost of building the कंपनी कंपनी फोर्ट एंड द ऑफिसेस एट कलकत्ता। तो सोर्स टू के बारे में हम लोग बात करें तो सोर्स टू में फिर दिया हुआ है द नवाब कंप्लेंट्स इन 1733 द नवाब ऑफ बंगाल said this about the English traders when they first came into the country. They petitioned the petitioned the then government in a humble manner for the liberty to purchase a spot of ground to build a factory house upon which was no sooner granted by the built a strong fort surrounded it with a ditch which has the communication with the river and mounted a great number of guns upon the walls. They have enticed the several merchants and whether to go and take the protection under them, and they collect a revenue which amount arrest 1 lakh. They rob and the plunder and the carry great number of the king's subjects of both sexes into the slavery into their own country. तो ये सब हो गया। उसके बाद फिर इसी में दिया है कंपनी ऑफिशियल्स बिकम द नवाब्स। तो इसमें फिर दिया है व्हाट डिड इट मीन टू बी नवाब्स। इट मीन टू it meant of course that the company acquired more power and authority, but it also meant the something else. Each company servant began to have the visions of the living like the nawabs। उसके बारे में फिर आगे दिया हुआ है after the battle of Plassey the actual nawab of the Bengal were forced to give land and vast sums of the money as the personal gifts to company official. Robert Clive himself amassed a fortune in India. He had came to Madras, now Chennai, from the England in 1743 at the age of 18. When in the 1767 he left India, his Indian fortune was worth 14 lakh 1102 pound. Interestingly, when he was the appointed governor of Bengal in 1764, he was asked to remove the corruption in company administration, but he was himself across the examined in the 1772 by the British Parliament, which was the suspicious of his vast wealth. Although he was acquitted, he committed suicide in 1774। इसके बाद फिर आगे दिया है however not all company officials succeed in making money like Clive. Many died and the early death in India due to the disease and war, and it would not be right to regard all of them as the corrupt and the dishonest. Many of them came from the humble backgrounds, and the uppermost desire was to earn the enough in India, return to Britain, and lead a comfortable life. Those who managed to return with wealth lead the fleshy lives and the flaunted their riches। उसके बाद फिर ऐसे में आगे देता है दी वेर कॉल्ड द नवाब्स एंड द enlightened vision of the Indian world Nawab. They were the often seen and the upstart and the social climbers in the British society, and were the ridiculed ridiculed or made fun of in the plays and the कार्टून्स। उसके बाद फिर इसी में एक सोर्स दिया है उसके बारे में पढ़ते हैं हम लोग। सोर्स 3 हाउ डिड क्लाइव सी हिमसेल्फ। तो एड Hearing in front of a committee in the parliament, Clive declared that he had shown the admirable restraint after the battle of Plassey. This is what he said. To consider the situation in which the victory at the Plassey had placed me. उसके बाद फिर ये ग्रेट प्रिंस वाई द डिपेंडेंट वन मैनी प्लेजर एंड opulent city lay at many mercy. My mercy, it's the bankers richest banker bid against each other my sim for my smiles. I walked through the vaults which were thrown upon to me alone, paled one the either head with gold and jewels. Mr. Chairman, at this moment I stand the astonished at my modernization. तो ये सब हो गया। तो यहाँ तक हम लोग देखें। अब आगे हम लोग देखेंगे अगला वीडियो में कंपनी रूल और एक्सपेंस के बारे में। तो ये यहाँ तक हो गया। अब आगे हम लोग यहाँ ये सब देखेंगे। उम्मीद करते हैं वीडियो आप लोगों को अच्छा लगा हो। वीडियो अच्छा लगा तो वीडियो को लाइक करें।